My family kicked me out of the house because my golden child brother wanted more privacy. Years later, they came begging me to help him, but it was already too late. My family kicked me out of the house when I was 18. Not because I did something wrong. Not because I was rebellious, irresponsible, or causing trouble. No. My expulsion was a sacrifice my parents decided to make for the greater good. That greater good was my brother, David, or as we called him in our family, the golden child. Let me explain. David was always the favorite. From the moment we were kids, everything in our house revolved around him. If he got good grades, my parents celebrated like he had discovered the cure for cancer. If he didn't, it was never his fault, it was the teachers, the classmates, anyone but him. Every Christmas, David got the best gifts, the best opportunities, the most attention. No matter how hard I tried, I was always second place. I wasn't a bad student. I wasn't rebellious. But nothing I did was ever enough. He has so much potential, my parents would say over and over again, and since I was the older sister, I learned to accept my role. Not because I agreed with it, but because that was the family dynamic. I was the good daughter, the invisible support system. I cleaned the house when my mom was tired. I helped my dad organize his paperwork when he came home late. And of course, I helped David with his homework. I was always there like a useful piece of furniture in a house full of expectations that were never meant for me. But when I turned 18, everything changed. David was 16 at the time, and he started complaining that he needed more privacy. It was the first time he had ever asked for something like that, and my parents took it very seriously. First, I didn't think much of it. I assumed he wanted a bigger desk or more space for his video games. I was wrong. One night at dinner, my mother dropped the bomb. "We think it's time for you to become independent." I almost choked on my water. Independent? At 18? I laughed nervously and asked if they were joking. I had just started college. I lived with them. I worked part-time, paid my own expenses, and contributed however I could. What did independent even mean? "It's not that you're doing anything wrong," my dad said quickly. "It's just that David needs more space, more privacy. You're older now. You should start living on your own." I was stunned. They were asking me to leave so my brother could have more space. Like I was some temporary tenant who could be removed the moment David wanted a bigger room. After weeks of arguments and tears, I realized I had no choice. My own family was kicking me out because their golden child needed more privacy. By the time I accepted it, they had already started packing my things. My dad even helped me look for a small apartment like this was the most normal thing in the world. So I left. I carried my bags, my pain, and a resentment they never saw or worse, never wanted to see. The first few months on my own were brutal. I could barely afford rent. I worked part-time at a cafe while continuing my studies. I was exhausted, lonely, and angry. But during those days, I made a decision. I didn't need them. If my family had chosen David over me, I could learn to live without them. So I cut them off. I blocked their numbers. I stopped going to family gatherings. I focused on rebuilding my life. Years passed. I graduated from college with honors. I got a good job at a financial consulting firm. Eventually, I moved into a much larger apartment. Over time, the pain of being rejected by my family turned into emotional scar tissue. I stopped crying at night. I stopped wondering why I was never enough. I stopped hoping they would call to apologize. And of course, that's when they did. Almost 6 years later, I received a text from my mother. No greeting. No, "How are you?" Just, "We need to talk about your brother. It's urgent." My first instinct was to ignore it. David? The same David they kicked me out for? No thanks. But curiosity won. So I replied, asking what was so urgent. My mother called me shortly after. "David is in trouble," she said, her voice shaking. "Trouble?" Something in her tone made me listen. "He's out of control. We don't know what to do anymore. The golden child. The perfect son. He was using drugs. He had been in rehab multiple times. He had stolen money from them. He disappeared for days at a time." My mother cried on the phone, begging me to help. I stayed silent. Help? After what they had done to me, after throwing me out like garbage, they wanted me to fix their precious son? In a perfect world, that would have been the moment I told them to deal with the consequences of their choices. But I didn't. So somehow, I agreed to see them. Walking back into that house after so many years felt surreal. Everything looked the same, yet completely different. My mother hugged me like nothing had happened. My father made awkward jokes, as if 6 years of silence could be erased with small talk. And David was broken. He wasn't the arrogant teenager I remembered. He was a hollow version of himself wandering through the house like a ghost. He barely spoke to me. My mother filled in the gaps. David started using drugs in college. First marijuana, then harder substances. Eventually, addiction took over. They spent thousands on rehab. Nothing worked. For weeks, I became the family's unofficial counselor. I looked for specialists. I tried to talk to David. I tried to help. It was pointless. He didn't want help, not from me, and probably not from them either. One afternoon, after a particularly hard conversation, David snapped. He told me I had no right to come back into his life and judge him, that I was only doing this out of revenge, that I was never really part of the family. And that's when it finally clicked. I never had been. I knew it the moment they kicked me out for his privacy. I knew it now. 2 weeks later, my mother called again, completely devastated. David had disappeared. This time it was worse. He had stolen a large amount of money, sold valuables from the house, left behind a cryptic note. My parents were desperate. They begged me to find him. Once again, I was expected to save him. I searched everywhere. I contacted people from his rehab programs. Nothing. Days later, they found him. A cheap motel. Unconscious. An overdose. There were no miracles. By the time he reached the hospital, it was too late. David died that night. And with him died the last hope my parents had of saving their perfect son. Now I visit my parents in that empty house. The house they kicked me out of. The house David wanted all to himself. A house now filled with broken memories and shattered dreams. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe.